Recording in progress.
Help me, Wendy. All right, welcome to a special meeting of the Richland School Board of Directors. We are here tonight to have a workshop to talk about our board planning for the year. And we have packets in front of us with a few topics for us to sort of run through. I'd like to start with the introduction of our new student rep, if Sanan would like to do that, and then she will be sworn in at the August 25th meeting.
Yeah, so this is Chloe. We picked her after long peer review process, and she's just the best fit for the role, and she's really excited, and also has to leave at 5:30. So
Okay.
It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
welcome.
Welcome. So the first thing that I wanted to cover tonight, in your packet, you have the tentative 26-27 board meeting calendar, as well as the school district calendar for the year. One of the things that I had asked Ruby to do was to match up second and fourth Tuesday of the month against the school calendar and holiday calendars and all of that, to see if we would have any challenge this next year with any of the standard holidays, which we ran into earlier this year and had to move a few things around in real time. It turns out that none of these days intersect with holidays or school holidays or anything like that. So just wanted to let everybody know that this is what the calendar would be for the year, with no changes to the standard sort of schedule. If there are any questions about that. You may notice that Labor Day is not until September 7th this year, and so while we start the week before Labor Day like we always do, it's not till September 1st. So instead of starting in August, we start school in September. I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about alongside that was whether we want to maintain the same cadence we've been running with one meeting a month focused on academics and one meeting a month focused on operations, or whether we want to adopt a different approach to scheduling our agendas that is focused more on a balance of academics and operations with more student recognition. And I think Jill prepared a handout with some of that information. So which handout do you want everyone to look at? I gave you guys the treasures to look at. Is it this one?
It is the one, not the academic workshops.
The one that says academic meeting / update
Okay.
model. So do you want to walk us through what you did here?
Yeah. So basically what I did is I went through and used my new best friend, ChatGPT, and I worked on this about, 5 or 6 hours. And continuing to do prompts on what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish it, and sort of implementing our goals and taking them out. And this, after that time, was sort of what it came up with. The other nice thing that this does too is it ties in the annual reports that have to be submitted to OSPI, as well as special education reports and any of the other reports. Do you have one of these? You want one?
Sure, I'll grab the first.
You're sitting over there.
It's, you know,
It makes it easier when you see it. So one of the things that I found in doing some best practices and looking at some of the other board meeting minutes and such, 75% of board responsibility should fall for the student outcome and academic success. And about the other 25, roughly 65 to 75 and 25 to 40% spent on operational issues. So what this does is it divides it up based on, and I just put in some of the ideas that we had for the academic meetings. Those will be tied more closely to what our goals are as we go through. But you'll see that it just kind of flows through on the types of things that we should be looking at and questions we should be asking during each one of these. All the way through the year. And to go with that, there is a calendar. So one of the reasons I think that our board meetings go longer than sometimes they should is because a lot of boards go through and do at least one workshop a month, where they do a deep dive into some of the information that's presented at the board meeting so that we don't go in as deeply. Dan and I had a conversation, and one of the things that he had mentioned to me was that it would be really nice to know what data and what information we want the administrators to prepare and give us. So based on what the goals are that we set, this has different reporting levels and different grids to actually do data monitoring and progress managing for each one of our specific goals, as well as ensuring that things that are table stakes, kids that are high risk, absenteeism, discipline, all those types of things that we keep monitored on either monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. Basically, quarterly. But some of the ones that are more applicable to what our overall goals are, like say we want K through 3 reading at grade level by whatever, then those reports. But you'll see that the list of each one of those reports on these are outlined in pretty good detail. There's also one other sheet on there that just goes to show what the required reporting is for OSPI. But that also got combined into these other chapters. It just helps us streamline a little bit and stay organized, and also not necessarily just have presentations or reports on things that are required to go to OSPI or required to do that. It really gives us the ability to see the impact that each one of the schools is having on student outcome based on the things that we're doing. There was another sheet that my computer was reading last night. But it does a program analysis, and it's one of the things I had talked to Shelley about earlier, was going through and looking at the costs associated with our programs. All of them have an MTSS, CKLA, I mean, any of the programs that we're putting money out there for, what our cost is, and then how progress measuring to see how effective they are, to make sure that we're not still continuing to put money into things that may not cause it out.
So one of the other documents you have is a spreadsheet with different policy numbers. And when there is an annual report mandated by the policy and some of it by RCWs or program reviews. The way that this has been done historically is we kind of randomly have program reviews throughout the year. In some cases where it's already the end of the year and what we're approving is basically what's been done over the past several months as opposed to approving it at the beginning of the year. So one of the things that I would like us to move to is more of a scheduled approach where some of those programs are done earlier in the year so that there's actually a chance to influence how that's going to be done, as opposed to approving it when we're a month before school. So and we had Kelsey go through and look at the policies, and there were a few surprises in here. I think there are a couple of them that we have not necessarily been doing, or they've been coming through on consent. Some of them in the case of like policy 3205, sexual harassment of students, 3520, student fees, fines and charges. Superintendent is supposed to make an annual report to the board on like incidents, incident reporting, efficacy of policies and procedures, and stuff like that. So what we're gonna do is try to get an annual cadence for those things so that we can get them written into the calendar for the year. So that, for example, she could go through and do a report in, let's say, the fall for what happened this past year. And then what we've learned from it, maybe, and what we would do differently going into this next year.
If there are some of these that we're comfortable with, and you get comfortable with the format and everything, there's no reason that some of them can't be the consent agenda.
That's right. I mean, some of it may just be pretty standard practice for reporting. You know, the same thing is true with, you know, the long list of OSPI reporting. I think we've talked about just making sure all the OSPI reports are on consent so that we see them as matter of information as opposed to not knowing what's been submitted.
And some of those are worth the presentation. Just because, like the F, 196 financial report, Travis reports on that. It's a little bit different than what gets submitted to OSPI because that looks more, or to the state because it looks more tax form. The special education one is another one that Zach will generally do a presentation on. More data. I just see some of those listed in the. There's several that the WIDA report, any of those. I think it's kind of fun how we want to monitor and track that based on student outcome. Would be something that we would want to look at outside of consent.
So you're thinking that we'll look at this list right now or next week or whatever, and select which ones we're gonna want presentations for. And kind of an idea, general idea of which part of the school year we want that. The other ones that we'll say, consent.
So that calendar with the months, when it goes through, has the month that those reports are due. So that helps you kind of target what month you can put those on your agenda.
And some of these we do anyway, right? Like on September where it says review opening enrollment reports, we do that every year in September anyway. Reviewing the district improvement goals. So last year we did our board workshop for setting goals in August, and then in the September board meetings, we talked about the district goals. And so I think we've done some of these already in this way. But what I think we wanted to try to do is get a calendar so that, you know, to your point, Jill, the cabinet knows what we're expecting to be presented during the year to be prepared.
And one of the things, I think it was on this one too, that they talk a little bit about is determines and looking at the following year's goals earlier rather than August when school starts, so that administrators have an opportunity, because administrators work during summer, part of summer, to work on those goals and put together the plans before school actually starts.
So I think, Dan, to answer your question, yeah, I'll have a look at these and see which ones, you know, you feel like are worth having presentations at meetings, as opposed to some of them that, you know, will just, you know, potentially be in consent.
Well, and some of the reports that are required to go into OSPI might not be reports that we ask them to do presentations on to measure our goals. Those are just ones that OSPI decides it's important for them to. Do whatever it is they do.
Okay. And then the other thing that we will be looking at is for these particular policies where it says that we have a timeline. Each year annually, we'll be trying to stack some of those earlier in the year for the program reviews so that they're in front of it. Figuring out which of these annual reviews are required by law as opposed to just written policy. Whether or not we have to do them. And some of them are required by a certain date, like the budget approval is due at the end of August, and so. We will start with the initial budget discussion on August 11th, and then we'll need to pass it meeting on August 25th in order to hit the votes timeline. What we will be working to do some things.
Rick, policy 1810. It says the WAS classification, it says WAS retired October 2025. Do you remember that in WASA? Because that's sort of what boards do.
They replaced it with a different policy. So there's a different one that I found that is like board governance and self-assessment or something. So they created a new policy. They probably
Okay,
rolled
so
this one into another
that
one.
should say some, okay. Because I was going,
But so we have this one right now, 1810. We do not have the other one that Wadsworth rolled this into in RSD. We don't have an RSD policy.
so I wonder what that policy, I'll make a note to double check what that new policy is, because I can't imagine that wouldn't be. I mean, it's probably not.
It's
Not
critical, I think it's called important.
Because critical is anything that has a WAC associated with that keeps us out of legal trouble. Important are the ones that basically keep you a more functioning, well-rounded board. And then they've got the discretionary. But I don't,
So it's 1820 and it's called board self-assessment.
but that one was in there too. That's not in, I need to check with WASA because I don't remember them taking that portion out of our policies. Because, I mean, that's basically what we're doing.
Well, RSD doesn't have 1820. Which is.
We have it under, yeah, well,
So we would have to decide whether we want to update policy 1810 to be consistent with WASDA policy 1820. If
do
those
they
are
call
the
that one
ones,
critical? Probably not,
probably not.
okay. Because on
If it
the,
was critical, it would be in Kelsey's list.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think
it's not.
in Kelsey's list.
well, but critical used to be 1810,
And now it's retired.
and now it's retired, so that's, that doesn't make any sense, so I'll check with WASA for that. I
Some
think-
of these are on both lists.
Right, so 1810, which you have a copy of in part of your handout, requires an annual goal review and discussion as a board to reflect on the degree to which we've met our goals and objectives for the year by conducting a board self-assessment. So in the 2.5 years I've been on the board, we've never done that, as far as I know. So
But you have an email now to do the board self-assessment.
Right.
And if you don't have it, I can have Ruby send it out again. But we need to have that completed no later than June 13th. Even before, the sooner you can do it, the better. And then I'll tell you why we can talk about the decision. So, yeah, I'll give you some schedule.
So is there interest in updating this policy? I think you and I could kind of work on how we would want to update that.
Yeah, I
And
think,
whether or not we want to require an annual review, or we can talk about that when we put the policy up.
it's like I said, I know it used to be on there. But I don't know if it's obviously not backed by a WAC. we can combine that and figure out, and I'll double check the policy, to see what they did with this policy, because that makes sense.
Okay, so I think the outcome from this initial discussion is, what we will do is work on over the next couple of months, a calendar for the next school year. Based on the OSPI reporting requirement timeline. And our policies that we have that require an annual review, so that we can kind of slate into the months when things need to happen. If you all have thoughts about what you'd like to have included in those presentations, let us know so that we can get that in the calendar. And so that we can help the district be prepared to present on those things at a certain time. The other thing that we wanted to sort of talk about related to that is workshops. So we had a workshop last month to talk about superintendent search. The workshop today for annual board planning is a best practice. We have another workshop planned later this month for school improvement planning discussions. That timing is critical because those school improvement plans are also due in August. Usually we don't have a workshop in July because that's kind of the summer month that the district takes vacation and people aren't around as much. But I'd like to talk about kind of as we get into this next school year, what workshops we're gonna want to hold so that Ruby can work with everybody to start thinking about dates for them sooner rather than later. In August, we would typically do a goals workshop. And that would be where we give the district suggestions of the types of goals that we would like to see, sort of based on how everything went this year and maybe what's done and what we want to start for next year. We can have some of those discussions during board meetings, during the next 2 board meetings where Dr. Redinger will review kind of the outcomes of the goals for the year this next week. So we can provide the district with some suggestions. And then they can bring us ideas and we'll have like a discussion. So at that August workshop, we would focus on goals.
Do you think it would be better to do one early July when we did that, so that they have a chance to think about that and put things together before school starts?
For us to talk without the district or?
Well, I mean, at least some, I'm sure, I mean, they take vacation time during that time period, but I think they work. My concern is we always kind of get behind the 8 ball when we do that. Because we're putting together goals as school is starting and as school improvement plans have already been implemented. So I don't.
We could shoot for early August. That way it would be nearly a month before school starts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, what are your thoughts, Rick?
I think that if we want to influence school improvement plans or district improvement plans, we should have done it a few months ago. Because my understanding is, the process that I would envision is the board has goals for the next academic year. We work with the district staff and I'm thinking about 2 different sets of goals first. So the district improvement plan would say, here's some academic goals or things we want at the district. That district improvement plan then drives the school improvement plans.
Yes.
Because of the categories that they would be working on. So because we are looking at the end of June at school improvement plans that are already done. They did not.
See, that's where it got
that.
discombobulated then because.
That's why I think this is a good idea, because we can say for the 27-28 school year, we want to do the goals. You know, maybe you start that in January or February. I don't know what this in the district improvement plan timeline looks like, but we should backward plan. So for this year, when I said there's 2 sets of goals, this year there might be a set of goals that are at a higher level, not the academic things that we normally see, in the civic and district improvement plans, but those goals that we talked about, things like do we still want a district goal for a particular program to be implemented over the next couple of years? Things at that higher level. And I would see us doing that in August. And then as part of this process, let's figure out with the district what one we should be talking about for academic goals that would inform the district improvement plan and then inform the civic. My guess is halfway through the school. I'm guessing.
And I'm not sure if school improvement, at least from what I've seen in the past, and sometimes we review them and sometimes we haven't, and sometimes we've done and sometimes we haven't. Should be on making sure that the schools are addressing things that are against stakes. All kids need to have growth, all kids need to have, X, Y, and Z. They don't always necessarily originally the bigger 2 or 3 goals that the district sets aside as a whole, but more truly is, the MTSS, which we've been doing all the time. Make sure that that's implemented in their housing.
2 sets of goals.
Yes, the individual schools and, making sure that K through 3, they're reading on grade level. Those shouldn't be things that necessarily we set as overall goals.
Right.
Those should be things that as a public school district, we ought to be doing every single year measuring.
So
Yeah.
our job is to approve the district improvement plan.
Yes.
We don't by law have to review or approve the school improvement plans. That's superintendent and the
Yes.
staff's job. Now we do, and we have, depending on the board, some boards want to, some boards don't. The school improvement plan should feed into the district improvement plan.
It's in our policy
Yes, in our policy.
that we approve, so.
And that was the best board decision out of law.
And then I think if we did that, then we talk about overall district goals, if we do that in the June or part of August, those big ticket items, no less than 1 or 1 to 5. Where we really have an impact across the board on the equity and programs we offer, as opposed to individual schools, which will do their SIPs associated with what expectations are.
Right, sometimes you have a goal for a year, like we are going to run a levy this year, that would be a district goal, cost levy. So yeah, those are those higher level things that I think we should discuss in August. Sometime.
So I think what I'm hearing is district improvement goals would align with the matrix that we created last year that had the sort of 3-year stretch goal to improve by 10% in different areas. That's our matrix we created last year. The school improvement plans are tied to that matrix. So, they should be.
Yeah, they should.
Right, we tried last year. Hopefully that's what we'll see at that workshop. And so we can stick with that matrix in looking at those school improvement plans that we're gonna get in a couple of weeks. And then we can decide later in the year whether we want to adjust that matrix for them to build school improvement plans next year.
Right.
Yes.
Because in the process.
Yes.
In the past, we've done the goals. Have you ever set them longer than 1 year? This is a 2-year goal or a 3-year goal?
The academic goals have been there.
They have to.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
that
3-year.
academic matrix of goals that we set was a 3-year, 10% sort of growth, sort of stretch goal. Yeah.
And then some of the other goals that we implemented in there, like we put the MTSS goal in there just because we want to make sure that the groundwork got laid to make sure that each one of the schools really have the framework in order to go out and successfully implement what we've sort of been doing. It's the implementation of the systems that we have sometimes lacked a little bit from school to school.
So in August, we'll try for early August to get a workshop to talk about those kind of project-based goals or program-based goals for the year. That would be independent of the academic metrics that's driving school plans. So again, if you have thoughts for those types of projects or goals for next year, we can take a little time before we're done to throw some of those around, and then we can also talk about them at the next couple of board meetings. And then that can help the district prepare for stuff that they bring to us at that meeting in August for discussion. And then the idea would be that based on feedback from that discussion in August, they would bring back to us goals for board approval at September board meetings. So that we would be working toward establishing what the goals are for the year, what are the metrics of success and the timelines.
And those are, right now we're talking just academic. Cause we could have goals that are,
So what we're talking about right now are the project-based goals, they're not the academic goals. So the academic goals are part of that matrix that's a 3-year thing, and we're 2 years into that 3 years. So I think what we would do is keep that for this year, because we're 2 years into the 3 years.
give me an example of a project-based goal that's passed.
So one of the current goals that we have for the district is the high cap goal. And that was a project that they ran all year to evaluate our current program, make recommendations for changes, and then establish an implementation plan for the next, 3 to 5 years to serve more kids in the district. So
We do a language with the school.
last year,
Yeah, so. And the MTSS goal this year was one of those project-based goals.
it was,
Yeah.
with the intention that it would really serve the academic.
Yeah,
Goals
would help
and
plan
metrics.
us and then to go and evaluate that. So yeah, it's kind of the framework that goes to making sure that we reach the goals.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out if we're ever talking about this project-based goal about things like transportation, so IT, and what some of these other things that aren't necessarily as closely tied into academics, because the 3 examples you gave are still kind of tied into academics and offerings.
Right. So the ones that we set last year, we had created that matrix of academic goals with the 3-year sort of stretch goal in 8 or 9 different areas, including graduation rates and a couple of equity gaps that we were trying to fill. So that was sort of separate from the project-based goals. And the project-based goals that we created were like establishing and implementing the MTSS framework and the high cap program, the asynchronous program, the facilities planning, and the staff audit and job description. So those were like 5 project-based goals that we had picked last year. Some of those are stretching beyond the school year because they run in December. But this would be the time for us to say, okay, if high cap is done and we can declare victory, what would be a project-based goal that we would ask the district to take on next year? Would we establish something around Chromebook usage or Chromebook policies, or would we ask for something related to bullying, and hip stuff, and really trying to move the needle on that, or inclusion, right, in special education, right? Is there a particular goal? But then to Jill's point, we can talk about the list of 12 or 20 of them that we have in mind, and we really need to narrow that down, like 3 to 5.
It's not just narrowed down to 3 to 5, but 3 or 5 that aren't stacked on the same staff members.
Exactly, and the other thing too with those projects. If there's still work that needs to be done with those projects, like the high cap or whatever, that just becomes part of the day-to-day work. So we let them go forth and conquer with what they learned. And it's not like it gets forgotten and that we never return and report back on it. We need to keep that momentum moving. But it doesn't mean that that's one that we're necessarily going to be tracked. And we'll be tracking it in our reports, but it won't be necessarily used as a measurement.
Right, so if they bring us their 3 to 5 year implementation plan,
Yes.
and we approve that plan, then that becomes table stakes that they implement.
Yeah.
And hopefully it improves the academic matrix and the academic performance for serving all students, but then we move on to.
But we still, through the course of our meetings and maybe some of our workshops, make sure that we're getting progress monitoring on those things during the course of the year to make sure that it is still moving forward and that we haven't claimed victory and we did not. Maybe a return report. Which these are things I think that we've kind of attempted to do over the course of the years as far as following, but I think this really helps us streamline and gives everybody a better picture of what the expectations are and what our conversations look like. When we're getting important in our workshop.
So, just a couple things to kind of keep us moving. One of the things that we're talking about is, for the August 11th board meeting, is the possibility of having a little workshop at the beginning of that for the budget planning process, so that Travis can walk us through the whole budget planning process and answer questions, as a more focused sort of conversation. A goals workshop is something separate that we would need to do. And then in September would be the timeline that we would be getting back proposals for the superintendent search firms, where we would ask like our top 3 that we've reviewed to come in and do a short presentation. So that could be done during a workshop in September that's separate from a board meeting, or it could also be done as kind of a, 2-hour block before a board meeting. Just to do it all in one day. So
For that. Suggest because they were not moving our academics and some other things, student events, to a different spot. And we will probably during that search process have additional meetings and things that. Like,
so you're saying you would prefer to do it as a separate workshop instead of before meeting?
and I don't think it's. Unless we
I thought you were saying the opposite.
I thought it was- yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying don't do it in a meeting, do it. Not necessarily as a workshop, but sort of like what we did with the. I mean, it's argued, but sort of like what they did with the. Facilities management contracts, or. Where we just scheduled and they did a quick presentation.
But we didn't pick.
No, I'm saying they did it, I'm just
Right.
saying it's a similar process to that.
But we can't do that for the superintendent search. Because the board decides that, not the district.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying, to do a board workshop and then have a conversation and vote during the board.
You're saying the same day.
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
saying the
have
same
it
thing,
before on the same day.
yes,
So you are saying to do it the same day as a board meeting?
but not in the board meeting,
Before the board, meeting, a workshop before the board meeting.
yes.
Okay.
So
Can that be at the first meeting in September? Are we ready that early in September for that?
If that's the calendar that we put on the RFP, then we could be ready to do
Yeah.
that at that.
I'm not gonna be here for the second one, which we can do without me, but
Okay.
I'm not gonna be here for the first one.
I can try to change my plans if we need to change.
That said, I don't care if it's on the same day or not. Having it during the meeting. These are interviews for people where we have to follow the same format.
Right.
That's-
I just don't want.
That will be boring for the public, and that doesn't mean we're not gonna
Right.
televise it, but I see that as a workshop. So
Yeah.
whether it's the same day or different.
These are,
And I
these are the,
absolutely
these are the
agree.
firms making the presentation, right?
Right.
They make a presentation, just
I can
Listen,
be, I
go
can
to
be
executive
virtually available. Okay, so
You could be virtually available on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Are you out on the 8th?
And you are definitely out. It's
district, so
because our security is,
Doesn't let you join from a different continent.
Strict phone still not. Even
Out of
though
the country.
we can't get email, you know. So if you really wanna unplug, you just
We've been.
go across the border and you're golden. Even if you're an employee.
So other than these workshops we've talked about, are there other workshops that we would like to include during the year where I think typically boards will do a workshop each month if there's something even sort of related to a goal that they want to learn more about. So for example, if we wanted to learn more about bullying and best practices for behavior management, we could do a workshop with the district where they sort of come in and educate us about how that's to be done, what the WACs are, what we can do, what we can't do, and sort of talk about what we might want to change.
Yes, I'd like to go through that one. For me, I'd like to be able to sit and digest it and come back, even if it's not the next 4 weeks.
So you could do that maybe in a meeting after they have to do the reports, because the HIB report has to get submitted. So either the month before that gets submitted, because they'll have the data that they're reviewing. But again, it depends on what we decide to look at. But you can kind of combine those with the dates and times that, reports are due.
Well,
Covered students. April.
I don't see it in the policy list, so.
And prevention program report review in April. School safety, security staff and report due to OSPI. But that's what I want to double check, is these reports that are due to OSPI, that they correspond with what we currently have with our.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys could take some of this and digest it and come back with suggestions, over the next couple of board meetings, we've got one next week and 2 weeks later in June, that we can use some of this in our discussion period during the board meetings. If there are things that you want to circle back to and make suggestions for us to add to the calendar, we can capture that and then work on the planning.
We have to sit on, I think, June 22.
Yeah.
That's school, district improvement, but
Those are the school improvement plans, yeah.
in early August, we'll have one on. The higher level goals.
Yeah, the project.
Yes.
And then September, we'll have one on, selecting the search firm.
At the end of September is when the facilities task force is going to come back with that. With the concerted school come back with a big list of,
End of September.
right, the second meeting in September. So that's happening.
Recommendations.
With recommendations, and I feel like that's a lot of information that we're probably gonna wanna have a workshop around. Facilities and any kind of decisions that we wanna be. About those.
So maybe a facilities workshop to follow those recommendations?
Yeah.
Or in October? It's a great suggestion.
So we'll count the selecting of the search firm as one of our education ones, or would that be in addition to our deep dive? I would think it should be in addition to a deep dive, but
So it just depends on how many deep dive topics we need to fit in through the year.
Are you talking about deep dives in a meeting or in a workshop?
in a workshop where we can actually get the data. Because one of the things, I think sometimes that I struggle with sometimes just the presentations that we get in board meetings, is we don't always get a lot of the data and information that we need in order to make decisions to help the overarching goals. It's more of a, here's the information, here's what we did with it, and there you go. Where I like to sort of do a deeper dive into some of the things like when we're looking at the NTSS or the schools on grade level, to actually look at those schools individually Whitewater's K through 3, Orchard K through 3, really see what those buildings that may be outstanding or really struggling in areas to really help use that data to facilitate and do overarching goals.
So are you talking about having those at a workshop? And then what happens at the meeting?
Well, the meeting is where you would decide and talk about and discuss further what you want to have in those. But the
So
problem
we
is.
wouldn't have to have like the report again.
No. Or it would just be the basic report. And not necessarily as long. I mean, we got to a point where the reports were a little bit less long. Where it would say, give it to us and then we would ask questions. But I think it's important for us to be able to have the data to really look at to see how we can help as we're review this.
Might help a little bit. The workshop one way, I think, but knowing what's coming up on the food reports or whatever. If we just had it outlined, and then we could at least communicate back and say, this is the kind of stuff I'd like to see, and so that when the staff is doing the report, they're not spending as much time as necessarily on stuff that I'm not asking for, but then also are more targeted towards questions that we already have into it.
I do like the idea of having it at a workshop though, because I feel like when we get reports in our packet and we're looking at all the stuff, I might have some questions, you might have some questions. And then when we just go back and like email or call or come in and talk to
Not everybody
staff
knows.
members, not everybody knows what everybody's hearing, and they might be saying the same thing to 3 different people and getting frustrated, like, why do I have to repeat myself so many times on this? When we could just have a workshop and all of us would hear the same information.
And we would decide on the importance of those workshops. It wouldn't be like. We'd make sure that it was a valuable use of time. But also it's critical.
Then we can all ask all those questions at the same time, I guess, is what I'm saying, we would all hear the same answer, so that we're not just like,
Peppering them with different and then.
yeah, so then they're like during the, during the work week or whatever, when we're coming in and bothering them or emailing or asking questions or whatever we're doing, that then each one of us is doing that separately, it's like, how are they gonna get their actual work done?
Yeah, my point on the outline was more of not expecting to have answers or whatever, but if they said, hey, we're having a report on school lunch menus, whatever it is, right? And we say, oh, things that come to mind that we'd like to know, right? And so when they then are preparing, even if it's during the workshop, preparing to present us with that information, they know kind of ahead of time what our natural questions were.
Yeah.
As individually there, and so during that workshop, they would be very good to know what information.
Yeah.
Not a bunch of back and forth beforehand, just kind of a first shot of this. These are the things that come to mind that I'd like to know.
We had asked, I guess a couple of things, I'd like to take a look and identify which things might, at least for me, be beneficial to have a board workshop on. We now work on agendas that are essentially 2 meetings ahead. And I think one of the ideas was we're gonna get board packets more than the Friday before. That gives us a chance to read it over a week, and then most of this stuff has data that is not brand new last week, right? But that hasn't happened yet. I think that would help in preparing for more meaningful time during the board meetings themselves. I want to make sure also that the board stays at the right level. And by that I mean, I don't want to spend my time looking at all of the elementary school data and trying to figure out where the outstanding ones are, where improvement might be needed. Because I think that's Brian Jones' job. And for him to come and report to us in summary fashion when he's looked at, here are the issues, because he has the academic training. It's his job to know what's going on in the schools. And I'm not saying we don't pay attention to the data, but I am saying that they should be as part of the presentation. For example, for elementary school, whatever category that is. They should already know those things and be working on those. It shouldn't be up to the board at a policy level trying to figure out how to quote, fix or help a school. That should be staff coming to us and saying, here are high performers, here's what they're doing differently, this is what we need to do here. And maybe they need a different policy, maybe they need different budget moving around, things like that. They should be telling us that.
And that's kind of what I mean, not as telling them how to fix it, but making sure that we understand and so that we can provide them resources that they need.
Right.
Not.
Along those lines, that when we have board meetings, it's become performative. I ask them not to do something like a stage, because board meetings in the Open Public Meeting Act, it is a meeting like this where we should be sitting around a little
Yes.
circular table talking. Open Public Meeting Act means the public can observe board interactions. Board meetings are not designed to be a method for communicating to the public. First, they're boring, second, they're long, and third, we should be communicating with a unified voice, which means after we vote, then we have a communications department that should be put out. So I think we could look at what agenda items we include and why on board meetings, so that we are moving forward on what an agenda would be if we were sitting around someone's kitchen table. And remembering that this isn't performance for the community, this is us having a meeting. And I think over the years, some boards have lost sight of that, some boards are better than that, but we need to be conscious about what we include on our agenda and why.
Well,
And who we're talking to.
it's not a meeting, it's not a business meeting for the public, it's a public business meeting.
We are doing the public's business,
It's not a meeting for the public,
correct?
it's a business meeting that's in
It
public.
should be a working meeting,
Yes.
done in public, as opposed to
Yes.
just a performance.
Right.
And report and all the stuff that we do, because that's not,
Right.
that's why we have communications that.
So one of the things we had done this last year was move. So typically our board leadership meetings and a lot of our in-person meetings with Dr. Reddings are on Fridays, because for work schedules, that's usually the most flexible day that we can be available during the day. We had moved one of our board leadership meetings to a Tuesday afternoon so that we could get a preview of the board packet 1 week before the board meeting. And 3 days before the packet had to be made publicly available. I think that's worked fairly well, at least for the two of us who come in and get the draft packet for what materials are ready. It's probably hard for the rest of the board who maybe gets it through email or doesn't see it at all, work schedules to be able to comment in just a couple of days to say, I'd like to see this, or.
We don't get it the front.
Yeah, they don't, and I
We don't
thought
see
you're
the
supposed to
students.
get them.
Yeah, I thought they
don't.
were.
Don't
Okay.
get it, right?
Okay, so I might make a suggestion. That we move our meetings back to Fridays and just keep them on Fridays. But we get those board packets a week before they would be made public. And they're sent out to the whole board.
Well, but remember, that's why we had to do a Tuesday and a Friday, because that didn't give them enough time.
So we are gonna give them enough notice right now that this is gonna be the expectation going forward, that board leadership is done on Fridays.
The
So,
week before the board meeting.
so the 10 days before the board meeting, there's a draft packet that we review, board leadership reviews, and is emailed to the board for your review, like over that weekend. And then if there are questions you'd like to see addressed that aren't addressed in the packet, you can provide that feedback by, say, Monday or Tuesday, and then they have to still have a few days to
Yes.
incorporate.
So then
that before
the official packet would be out.
That Friday
Right.
before the board meeting. Yeah,
But there would be more time for some iteration on that, in order to incorporate some feedback and questions or that sort of.
and that's sort of what the intent was to start with, but I think it just kind of got.
So that way, like what Jan was saying, if we see like. This is the draft of what information is gonna be presented to us, if we have additional questions that we want clarified or whatever, we can send those back in.
Right.
By Monday or Tuesday and then have that information.
Yeah, when you do that, I hope staff is comfortable enough. If it's not working for them, saying I'm just spending all my time preparing people. That they say something. Figure out what's not there.
So one of the reasons why we went to an academic meeting alternating with an operations meeting is so that the district staff have one meeting a month that they prepare for instead of every single meeting every month that they're responsible for something, because I do think that was the case in the past where they were just constantly churning materials for work.
Yeah, I just want them to feel comfortable enough to say, this is really, we're sending the packet out 10 days ahead, and then everybody's sending all these questions, and we're spending more time, we're now spending 10 days in preparation.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to say something.
I think most of them start trying to.
But I think I want to get back to something Rick said that I think was really important, pulling on Jill's point, which was when we get a presentation of some report, having that presentation be distilled into this is what we learned, here's what our recommendations are. So that they're telling us what they're gonna do from that report as opposed to here's all the stuff. What do you think? Because I think sometimes we get all the data or we get it and they say it's all wonderful and rosy, but there's not necessarily the lesson learned and how we, build from it. I mean, one that comes to mind recently that Brian sent out was the healthy use survey. I didn't realize it was like 150 questions. And it's just data. There's no report of what they learned from it or what they're gonna do about it. And so I think for me, I would like to reduce the number of presentations that are just throwing data over a wall and really distill it into something that's actionable.
I think that will actually help board meetings feel more productive as well, because sometimes I feel like I go home at 9:30 and think, what did we actually do? Like, we've heard a lot of information and.
Right.
I don't know, it just, which kind of goes to your performative thing, like where we're just like listening or like, there's just a lot of information bouncing around, but I feel like, did we really actually? I mean, I know we do policies and stuff like that, so it's not like that thing happened, but.
If you look at some things, I think that straight line meetings also, we had the audit reports during, well, a few years ago. I think in response to some board dynamics that weren't healthy, previous board.
Well,
I
when
think
we
it's good
used to do
information, but it's
performance audit-
performative, I don't know that
Which audit?
Well, when we used to do
Doctor.
performance, like, remember how different the performance audit reports were then than they are now? I mean, they were actually really good.
I don't know though that it's good data. It wasn't necessary for board discussion or decision.
Well, no.
So
but
what I'm
it's-
suggesting is that board meetings, we look at our agenda items and, agenda items should be preparing us to make a policy decision or other kinds of decisions.
Maybe if there's issues with the
Do-
audit or something.
Well, I really like the information that's given in the performance audit reports,
You too.
but does it have to be discussed out loud or can it just be in the packet?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Like the
It could be
information,
just a memo.
because I like that information, I like knowing what's going on, but I feel like.
Well, and we used to do more of that when we did Friday packets. Friday packets would be information. And newspaper articles and upcoming events. Where if it didn't need to be presented in a board meeting, they'd pull together data and do stuff like, for instance, that, and it would be sent out in the board. And now the board packet, yeah, and now it's, that Friday packet is just newspaper articles and dates, pretty much. I've seen any like informative.
We had the survey results recently that Jen put in a Friday packet. At the beginning of May. That maybe a lot of people might have missed because they didn't expect to see it. But
And I they haven't sent. Yeah.
so,
I think an example would be the health use survey. I read through the whole thing. And it's interesting information when you're sitting at your desk and spending an hour reading it. I don't need it presented.
but I would like to know what we learned from
if there are actions that are, you know, that are, social workers or administrators are taking from it. I don't need the data, I need, if the data has changed something, or if we think the data needs to indicate a
Well,
change,
no.
we should talk about that.
And how accurate do you really think that data is? Because I went through and I looked at it and it talks about, you know, who's using nicotine, who's vaped, who's done all this stuff, and 98% of the kids never touched any.
And I like the
However-
question, when they said, were you truthful on this?
Yeah,
Somewhat, a little
98%.
bit, oh, yeah,
98%. So my deal is, how in the world do we have all these schools with all these kids vaping in the bathrooms? I mean,
Yeah,
you
how do we have a $10,000 phone bill for getting vapes out of the clogged toilets?
out of the clogged toilets because
Vaping.
they've been flushed if nobody does it. So I mean, Sanat, this is a question for you. How honest do you think that students really are on those? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
we've
Sam
got-
really, he is honest on this.
Well, I'm just saying this because I mean,
Healthy user.
these are all in school ones. I'm sorry.
What is that?
98.7%
Is it the
of
biomass?
kids
Is that the same thing, biomass?
did not
Yeah.
ever touch any form of alcohol or
Well, if
cigarette.
you have something to hide, then you're on.
Or they might not even answer the survey. I mean, I asked my older kids, what they thought, because not only was it 98% hadn't done anything. When you looked at the breakdown of what 2% had done, it was like complete scattering, right? There was no one dominant thing, and
Yeah.
they just kind of laughed and said, no, it's not.
Well, I know a lot of kids don't even do it.
Well, and I don't know what we do with it. I mean,
Is
it's
it
a
required?
state, yeah, it's a state requirement, I mean, you can opt out of it. But it's what the state utilizes to make their recommendations and their guidelines and their money and whatever. Just like standard-based testing, in my opinion, so that they can come back and say what districts are and aren't doing.
Katrina, does that look on your face saying we should not done?
I thought so.
I don't think we have an opportunity to do that. I think parents have an opportunity, but I also think we need to figure out, and maybe talk to Brian, what benefit does it do for us? I mean, I think maybe for some kids, but if we're really utilizing Swiss data the way we're supposed to be utilizing Swiss data, it should tell us the exact same thing, but on a more accurate level than the survey.
In which case, I would really like to see a presentation of the Swiss data and what it really is telling us and what we're gonna do about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Which that would be
Which
another
we
good
didn't
action.
do.
We talked about it, we talked about doing that, but we didn't.
So the healthy use survey, not to get too deep in the weeds, is done every 2 years, I think. And I think it's important for trends. Because it's data like that that some of the social workers, some of the psychologists that I've been talking to are using to say the advent of the cell phone with social media has dramatically increased suicidal ideation, has dramatically changed their anxiety levels, things like that. Will it help specifically? I mean, we were all in high school. We didn't have vapes, but you know, I know kids smoked, kids smoked pot. If that is a surprise to people, they're living in.
But it is so, I don't know if you would be surprised or not, but it is so easy. The vaping thing is so easy. It's relatively undetectable. They pass them in the hallway to each other. That like, it's nuts.
My wife caught a person, an 8th grader, vaping in her classroom.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I mean, you see people vaping.
I mean, you know, back in the day when kids were smoking, you couldn't just like light up in the classroom. You couldn't do that, but you can vape while you're sitting in math.
yes. Agree.
So, I think what I'm taking from this is if we can figure out the list of these survey and data that are collected, that get submitted or reports that get back to us, which ones have information that the district can consume and do something with, and maybe do a presentation if there's recommendations where they need resources or policy changes or something from the board. In the absence of that, maybe it goes in the Friday packet, it's informational. That way we have maybe fewer agenda items that are informational and more that are actionable.
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll try to work on that, going forward.
I like that and kind of going back a little bit to the program audit of what we're spending money on and what works. I would like if we could, if everybody agrees with that or would like to do that. I think that's a good thing for them to be able to work on over the summer. Because you're not interrupted by school, you've got all the data, you have, just so that we can get it back before we do that budget meeting. Because if we're spending money on a bunch of things that are not being effective or we're not even utilizing anymore, I think we should pull those out. I know that when we originally started talking about the budget and pulling things back, that was going to be one of the part of it, but I mean, you can probably answer that. I don't think that that ever came to fruition. It was other aspects of what that was. But there's a lot, I mean, I was talking to Jen the other day, there's a lot of programs that we have.
They should be looking at those and that should be a matter of course.
Right,
If you're
that's
spending
kind of takes steps to get, but I think what happens is sort of like all the other things, we keep adding on. And the things at the bottom that maybe a few people are still utilizing and nobody really got rid of it. Is still there, costing money and it's really not impacting.
Agreed.
Um,
And maybe a higher level look over this summer,
mhm.
and I think it's gonna be late unless there's something really late. It's gonna be late to impact the budget that they've already established. That should be part of the process, right? They should say, if we're spending money on this program, here are the benefits of that program, not just say we spent it last year, we're gonna spend it again this year.
Well, and that's kind of what I see, and I think one of the aspects that I get frustrated with our budget. Is the levy dollars are really the only thing the school board really has control over how they get spent and how they get utilized. And we don't have those conversations. We do not sit and say, and that's where it comes back to the program, so like with ag or everything, we get presented with a budget. And they'll explain to us why, and then we either approve it or don't. I don't think we really look at and have the conversations with the community and really see what has the greatest impact on students that we're utilizing $7.
And I think we need to do that throughout the whole next year.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna do something over the summer, it'd be at a higher.
A high level, anything that really stands out or sticks out.
So I was impressed with that, for example. We didn't get a budget number that we didn't, there's 15 sections. If we had the data a week ahead of time, maybe that's one of the questions that you'll ask. Is this expandable? Is it scalable and what would it cost? And there's an opportunity cost with all of that. So just because it worked like something does not necessarily mean that that's where we spend money because
It's not student attached to it.
more than that, we need to understand what we're not spending money on.
Right.
It's a zero sum budget.
One of these forms too that I did is I went through and it does it helps set a budget layout on the program audit where it says what the cost is and then what the impact is and then what the results are and then basically is an yes or no. I mean, I know it's not that simple, but it puts it into tangibles so that you can see what the cost is, sort of an ROI.
So I think what I'm hearing is a request that when we do our budget workshop, that we have a bit of a program audit. Or what some of the program costs are that might be proposed for next year's budget. So that as we can have the conversation about what we might wanna discontinue or, what the recommendations are, but having more of a program audit along with that.
Because like teaching and learning has probably close to, I can't remember which is, I'm gonna throw a number out, but it is a big, like $75 for us. And most, and like all the enhancements that each one of the elementary schools utilize, for their teachers. There's costs associated with all those, so that's where the $70 is. So which ones are working, which ones aren't?
It's not just programs, right? I mean, the
No,
things that are
it's
not
enhancements,
even
it's-
considered programs, but just the stuff that was reduced to like this last year to make the numbers all work out, that, you get
Well, I don't know if we
feedback.
did a lot of those.
Well, there was some, I mean, you still get the emails about the librarians and Jazz 2 programs and stuff like that. I mean, those aren't considered programs per se. And but that is, those are spending decisions that are made.
So what we would be
more
looking
outside of staff, stuff that's outside of staff. All the things that we pay subscriptions and contracts to. I mean, dumb example, that Peachtree, Newsly, any of the programs that are at the schools that there's a subscription cost to. This, I mean, one of the things I was looking at the other day, there was a huge subscription cost, and I was asking some of the teachers when they.
So some of those that you said before, what is the? Trying to think of the right word to use, but it wasn't performance or whatever, but you know, what is the result?
Return on investment.
Return. Some of that's not measurable.
Yeah.
Right? On some of those.
But if nobody's using it,
Yes.
and it's costing money, then you probably should go.
you know, asking the question, just collecting the data, maybe I'm getting even at the district level for where individual buildings are spending money and what's worthwhile.
I think isn't that kind of some of the stuff that Travis and staff's already doing in preparation for next year?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's why I was just saying that if that's something we specifically want, we could make sure he's prepared for that, working on that over the summer. So that he can bring that to the workshop at the beginning of August.
right, so isn't that too late for some things?
Well, yeah, but it's just a good thing to be looking at, so that if we do that going forward.
I would presume that if we ask him to prepare that information, then
It's probably
the
our,
district office is reviewing all that information and making recommendations for what he brings to us. As opposed to him bringing us all the data.
Yeah,
and
that's
expecting
the
us
same
to
thing.
pay, right? At that point, it's more of a justification for the budgets that they're creating.
well, and hopefully, if he's already doing that, he shouldn't have any problem fighting for this. You know what I mean? If you're already looking at those
But
things.
one of our roles, right, is being the representative of the public. Right, and if they come to us and bring this stuff to us in August, when the decisions have been made and stuff, and they haven't heard necessarily some of the feedback we've heard from the public about different programs. Our input then becomes valuable, and if it's too late, then it's valuable but useless.
Well, so I mean, if he prepares this information to bring to the workshop that we have August 11th. Again, that can be prepared, the supporting information could be prepared and provided to us in advance, you know, if there's questions. We can have a healthy discussion on the 11th about stuff. We pass the budget at the following meeting, so it's not that we pass it that night, so there is time. I think just having preparation of that information will help the district make decisions, instead of just assuming everything status quo that they've been doing is continuing. If they have to provide the information, which is what's the program cost, what's the number of students impacted, and what is the return on investment, it may be eye-opening.
Right, I hear you, I just.
And hoping they're already doing.
I do too, I just, my concern there is that there's time from a board meeting perspective. There's not necessarily time from a preparing to either provide or not provide a service.
If we tell them now. Right.
That's why I said, I think it's too late for this current budget unless there's something really egregious that they would say, wow, I didn't know.
Right.
But over the course of the next year, we should build those discussions in as part of making conscious decisions that when we talk about habit, for example, we talk about the budget impacts. And is it scalable? Is this something that is benefiting students? Have that. Because I loved the habit presentation. But they also talked about, here's the impacts on kids and here's what it does for them. The kids came and said that was meaningful feedback, very impactful.
I guess
And I want to spend money on that.
my hope is that if there's something that they've already been working through, that is a change to what the status quo has been, that maybe we could get that in time. No,
Yeah.
but that's something that's coming.
either going up or going down. Yeah. I've also seen some things that I said, I think that's a waste of money.
And that's fine, and it may be that we get it and we sing it. Great. Carry on.
I would like to move us to just a quick discussion of board meeting structure. If there are any changes, we've talked a little bit about agenda topics and informational stuff going in Friday packets as opposed to decisional stuff. We did talk a couple of meetings ago about changing some of our personal comment periods where we have the comment period at the beginning, the opportunity for folks to provide comments if the board would like to in other decisional parts of the meeting. I don't know that we've officially rolled that out. I know they've rolled out the little cards for people to fill out. I can tell you I get those cards and people don't fill them out. They just put their name in.
Didn't have any comments.
We just had.
We haven't had any comments that are related to specific decisional things, but if we would like to implement that more formally, then we probably need to make a decision that that's what we're gonna do. And then include that in the agenda. If we include it in the agenda for the folks online who are watching, they could see that there are comment periods built in where there's something that's a decision.
I think we already made that decision, we just didn't put it on the agenda, where it shows each. In between each agenda.
But I think there was a meeting, at least one meeting where we asked, does anyone have a comment about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't really had.
We haven't really
There's been nobody here, there's nobody here to ask.
You are,
I like that, that's the way it was before COVID.
this session one, or the new one where we,
So we wanna continue that practice.
Okay.
I think for now,
Yeah.
it's a good idea to continue in because we haven't really done it yet. And we haven't really had an opportunity for it to meet people.
There are some districts that differentiate students and like kids. Asking questions, like there's one where students can ask at the beginning.
So we do have a structure where folks sign up, where we prioritize. So let's say we have a board meeting where we have 15 people sign up. Only 30 minutes set aside and people talk too long. We have a prioritization built in where I think students, parents, staff, community members, and like non-residents, kind of in that order, get prioritized, so that if we run out of time, it's the folks that are non-residents, they get kind of prioritized low and maybe don't get a chance to speak, so we do have some level of prioritization that's kind of built into it. But adults and students and staff can all speak during the public. So. Maybe what I will do is try to change up that opening statement that I have before public comment, just to make the statement again that public comments open and where we have decisions.
During COVID, I know that we did give students priority to talk.
I believe it's built into our structure.
I think it is too.
Cause like if I get the cards, I can kind of sort them if they say. You know, they represent or what their topic is.
And I don't think there's a sign up. I don't know, is there still a sign up for public comment?
Online. So.
Yeah. There is.
Does it ask all the same questions as the card?
Oh.
In terms of the topic?
I don't think so.
And who they are, so we might need to change the online sign up. To be
Yeah.
consistent with the cards that we're using in the back.
I do know that when I've been online and when I check at our meetings, we maybe have 12 people that are watching. And 11 teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, usually the only time you get a lot of response and a lot of community involvement is there.
When I missed that something, yeah. No, the teachers I know watch too. So we'll work on that, changing the online signs. Any other thoughts about the meeting structure changes you'd like us to consider for this year with the agendas?
I'm okay with not having the verbal audit, I said that once.
And just have it be part of the packet.
Part of the packet, unless there's some actions.
Well, they could almost be.
It'd be good to, yeah.
Unless there's a problem.
Sure. that requires, so the criteria I would use is, does this need to be brought to the board level for action or discussion? Information can be written.
Um,
It's the Ulster conference.
November 15th.
I saw on here, it says there's a conference on the same time as a board meeting scheduled, like November 20th.
Usually, it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
yeah,
and
so
pre-conference is on Wednesday, so it should never be.
It's the 19th, 20th, and 21st in Spokane.
19th.
Yeah,
Is it the 19th?
and then the 24th is that next Tuesday. It's always the full week before Thanksgiving.
And maybe we get a workshop.
After.
Workshop
On the Ulster conference, just.
Oh, stuff we learned.
What the insights.
usually we do talk at that next board meeting when we do our board member reports, we talk about some of the things that we learned.
I remember it was bigger job. The actual conference.
Yes.
Well, the other nice thing is, all the slides and all the information, Patricia got that, are available. So any of the workshops or such that you didn't go to, the presentations, you can.
Or you can harass them for 3 months until you get them,
Stop.
which I did last. All right, so the next thing on our list, we wanted to talk briefly about governance. And one of your handouts, that Jill provided has kind of a hybrid board governance kind of model and philosophy. I think one of the things we'd like for board members to kind of take this and digest it and think about, as we approach governance over the next year with the board, what our philosophy is that we'd like for it to be. Is it, more hands-on, less hands-on? There are traditional ones, policy-based, and hybrid models. And I think you've got the hybrid model here.
The hybrid model basically does a pretty good job delineating what the board's responsibility is versus what the administration's responsibility is. And it kind of helps what questions to ask, and it kind of gets to the data and information that you were going for. How governance philosophy, board focuses on student achievement, strategic priorities, community values, resource allocations, and accountability. Pretty basic. Anything that falls into that. Superintendent focuses on operations, personnel, implementation, administration, data. So I think what has happened a little bit is we have started to mingle in both aspects, which has made, I think, maybe both sides a little less effective than it could have been in some areas, but just, and then it goes into detail on questions to ask and how you make sure that you're on your board side of it versus the operation side of it.
So I think this is something for all of us just to kind of look over and think about, for how we prioritize our attention and our time. And kind of leading into the conversation about the self-assessment. That Jill had Ruby send out the link to do that.
Yes.
Part of the self-assessment asks questions about how effectively we work together as a board and with the district in our governance, in working with the district, so.
There's no, the main thing is there's no right or wrong answers. And I think it's really important that you answer the questions based on where you're at. Because that helps facilitate areas of, either, knowledge or resources or whatever we need to make sure that you get put on those. The other reason that we need to do that is if we want to, and Katrina, and I was talking about it last year, every year at WASDA, they do a board of distinction. There's small, medium, large districts. And I've been trying to get them to give me more specific detail. And it's like under lock and key for some reason. But let me,
So there's an application process associated with the Board of Distinction. I don't know what the right word is, sort of assignment or get named a Board of Distinction if you follow
it's a rubric.
certain things and there's a rubric. And so the self-assessment is one part of that rubric. You need to do a self-assessment to figure out what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, what you might need to do better. There's also a part of that that looks at, what are the opportunity gaps, what are the impacts of your goals, and your governance for the year. That, we wanted to kind of look at and see whether, there would be something that we could point to this year for the achievements of the district, that might be aligned with that program.
So overview, positive change in student outcomes doesn't happen overnight. In the application, boards will showcase their decisions, actions, and initiatives that have gradually reduced opportunity gaps and enhanced student success. It can take time for those efforts to be reflected in student outcome data, especially when looking at detailed subcategories on the entire student body. Acknowledging the long-term nature of this work, both boards of distinction applications ask boards to show with evidence how they committed to 1 to 5 years ago in benefiting students now. Also, the applications ask boards to share how they continue to focus on that work for long-term success. Applicants will need to clearly articulate which actions of the board constituted to better student outcomes, which parts of the initiative were operational by student staff, and it talks about how it's scored. Did the board identify any opportunity gaps? Did the board provide evidence of successful addressing these gaps? Did the board show that they learned from experience and where the learning led to adjustments in the districts? What elements of the Washington School Board standards align with the initiative? Did the board distinguish between its own actions and those of district staff? And did the board show connections between its actions and successful initiatives? So this kind of goes back to sort of when Rick and I were talking about who does what. It is the responsibility of the district, but I believe it's the responsibility of the board to make sure that we have the data and proven evidence that students are going. And I think sometimes, and why this may be a bit challenging for us at this point in time, because we don't ask the questions that allow us to get the data that shows support of this evidence. We can look at it, we can think about it, and I don't know how some of the other ones do it. I mean, almost every board I know applies for it, so I can't be, but those are the things that I think really makes a board become effective. And I think it's a good practice for boards to fill that out and try for it, because it will support accountability.
I don't get to throw something at me, but I think it's important to evaluate, do self-evaluation, look at what they're looking for to be a high-performing board.
Yeah.
I don't inherently feel any interest in applying for somebody to recognize us as being distinctive.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to spend staff time trying to prepare.
It's board time.
I hear you, but the evidence that you have to provide would take staff time.
Well,
If
but
you could have
the
it.
evidence, but my point on this is the evidence that we have to provide is evidence that we should already be getting.
Sure.
In order to make decisions.
Sure, and that's why I said it's good to look at and see what it requires, because it points in certain directions. I don't need anybody to say we're distinctive or not. That my 2 cents there.
Yeah, I really haven't done it, but I do want to make sure, and even if we don't do it, I would like
Go
to
through.
do it. Has Richard ever done it?
Or every doctor similar. It was a cohesive board.
I knew they'd done it a couple of times, I just didn't know.
That's when they only did one in each category too. Wasn't now you'll have 10 or 12.
Well, and I think it's changed pretty dramatically on how it's.
The process though is very good, because it forces you to be reflective on what our role goals and our actions and what should we not be doing. And it helps you focus on, if you're using the model that Wasser's using, it's an evidence-based model that says here are the actions, if boards do these, it positively impacts student outcomes. So the things they're measuring are things that empirically have shown improve student outcomes. So that part's good, right? I don't care if I get board distinction or not either. If maybe this is something to think about, if we want to be serious about going through an improvement process, having a facilitator who understands the process and understands the board standards, work with us on a routine basis would be helpful. Because right now we're reading things and, there's experience on the board, but there are people who do this professionally. So here are things that will help the superintendent, here are things that will help teachers. Here are things you shouldn't do because you're overreaching.
And another thing in your handout that I gave you is, on the one that says policy 1810 governance, there are some examples attached to that of the school board goals that have been set. I found a couple of examples, two in Washington. So the very first one is actually in Walla Walla. And so these are board performance goals that they set for themselves. They kind of outlines how they prioritize their own actions, to monitor student learning and performance, have a high functioning team, engage their stakeholders and communities, and create sound fiscal response accountability techniques. So, I know we talk about a lot of different goals and we have a lot of progress this year thinking about hiring a superintendent, but one of the things we might think about as we bring on board a new superintendent and then think about tackling a strategic plan might be figuring out how we distinguish district improvement goals from project-based goals, from superintendent goals, from board goals, right? For who's doing what. So eventually, that would be maybe a really great place for us.
Yeah. I do though agree with Jill that starting out with a board self-assessment is a good sign. That doesn't mean we have to.
Right.
It's easy to do, it's also free. And we'll provide some data on kind of what we're thinking about our own performance. Because we want.
So we got that in our email, right?
And Ruby just sent it again.
Okay,
So
so,
RS, use my personal one for that, thanks.
so we fill it all out individually and then do,
We get sent back to website.
okay, so then somebody compiles it all together.
Yeah, and they
get something back.
recap and they
Gotcha.
analyze and they rubric and they run it, and it takes about 20 minutes. We'll think about stuff. And there may be some stuff on there that you're like, time. Which is fine.
You're the only one that they put the name next to because you're a sport member and everybody else is anonymous, so.
Well, my ignorance was shining through.
Yeah, and it isn't even really knowledge questions. It's more operational type questions, like, do you feel like you'll see, I mean, it's much more operational and how we function as a team, as opposed to how much you know about me.
Any other questions about self-assessment? Try to get that done by, you said June.
I said like the
12th or
13th, but if you can
Okay.
do it earlier, this is to get it in the processing.
And the last thing on my list for us to talk about tonight, if anybody has suggestions or burning things they've been thinking about for goals for next year, for project-based goals that you want to sort of throw out for discussion, you can kind of preview for the district some ideas the board has that we'd like to consider.
Sure. Okay, fine. I have a bunch. So just because I say it doesn't mean it's gonna be a goal, it's just a brainstorm. First one is superintendent search, I think that's a goal for us this year.
We don't have an option on that one, nothing's gonna happen.
But that takes time. I would like to look at asynchronous classes again. We have Jefferson parents in here. couple of meetings ago, talking about investigating innovative programs or things like that. So one of the things I've been thinking about is collaborating with the Jefferson parents and looking at the programs that might be housed there. You know, working with that community, seeing what they think.
I mean, Montessori one more, I think that David brought up at one point that might be really popular.
Yeah.
That would-
Yeah, I'd like to, and work with them, so, you know, if they hear this, if they're one of the two people listening, this isn't designed to do anything to your school other than to talk with people there. Parents, folks there, see what they might think. We need to continue high cap, I don't know that that's a core goal. Dual language is still important, we need a facilities committee follow-up, I think that's gonna take some time this year.
Okay, that's 6.
But high cap and dual language and asynchronous learning, that would be if we continue with those process rather than kind of. Right? I just didn't, that's clarifying based on what we talked about earlier.
I'm not trying to solidify anything, those are just. 'cause
No,
we're
no,
gonna
no,
do it-
no,
we're gonna
and
do
I'm
it
just trying to
right?
process, process how that works. One thing I would like to see us do from a project base is, working with the counselors at the high school to make sure that they have a full understanding. Snug made a comment the other day about having the singing class, and he didn't need to take class because, it was already counted on the other side. The other part of that is, with CTE programming, there's graduation pathways that sometimes don't get addressed until their senior year. And I know CTE and the counselors work really closely together, but sort of going back into that systems analysis on what are our counselors doing, how are they providing, how are we making sure that students are on track for graduation, and how are we monitoring that outside of just ninth grade parents?
So monitoring graduation parents.
Yeah, and
Well,
what
the person that you're
counselors-
talking about is the girl who took physical science,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
When she didn't need to
when
take
she didn't
that.
need to. And I've been thinking about it before because I know as far as what high schoolers are talking with and really help figure out streamline what counselors are doing and what they're spending. Because over the course of the time I've been here, it's, you know, I don't get a response from the counselor, I try to deflect from the counselor, I try to, and not that they're not doing their job, but how can we make them more effective in the job that they're actually doing, which is to make sure that it's graduating.
So I wonder if some of this doesn't fall under the job description audit process that Matt is currently following with the staff. And
So
kind of
maybe-
tracking with the counselors of what are they doing and how to spend their time and whether.
Yeah, and they'll receive, if they haven't already, they'll receive the survey.
So good, and then, well, and actually, you're right, that will probably fall into that then stream.
Monitoring graduation
Yeah.
comparisons.
My other one is, how do we, well, the second one is in regards to the Jefferson parents and what we do with Jefferson. There's a couple schools across the state who were, not really poverty schools, but it is the lower income has, a master-based learning site. Where K through 5 is master-based learning. Incredibly successful kids for kids that aren't necessarily engaged. It's a little like scouts. And most kids when they leave after master base, they are absolutely on grade level before they.
It's like scouts, we get merit badges,
They get merit badges, they get stickers, they do the whole thing, and there's not really classes. You have K through 5, and you might have a 5th grader that is in class with some 3rd graders because that's the reading level that they're at. So it's almost like little kid project based learning. But some of these schools have been struggling, there was a couple of schools in Elm that they put together, and the dramatic increase in test scores from kids that were lower to higher in 1 year was like 35%. So that's just one that sort of and then the other one was reimagining this. These are just small checks.
What
Really,
does that look like to you?
that looks like making sure that when we have a 6th grader, That leaves us an eighth grader that they're ready to learn and are on grade level by the time they are freshmen. Because right now, we are sort of doing things with middle school, they're engaged, they're not necessarily involved. We heard from Chief Joe how project-based learning, some of the other things that they're doing, are really getting these kids involved. And we've also heard how many of those kids that are coming from middle school into high school that aren't even close. And that's just a tip of the
Just
iceberg
to
of what. I'm
piggyback
doing.
on the middle school thing, I think we talked, I used to ask the question before me last time about what I mean. Revenge now, middle school,
That's on my list.
I think then you discussed a little, I know there are kids that are having a tough time in our traditional middle schools that could use something like that, and because there's not something like that, we end up on online. But
But online's not.
online is not what they need, you know, they still need to be in person somewhere. But it's not in our.
Yeah. What- Yeah. A lot of
And
those
and they
school boards.
need something either dramatically different than what Homlink is doing, or
Doesn't make
there's
no
not
room
space,
there.
right? I mean, yeah,
And this may dovetail right in with the
Right.
facility stuff. And I don't know, you guys can tell me when I throw stuff out, hey, that would fit into our project. It's fine, let's throw that out. The other thing is, you go back to the technology usage stuff, but I know the first report we got on it was based around the education side, the instructional side of things. I think that we continue to miss the IT portion of our operations, the few months that I've been here. We haven't had anything that's looked at that, and I think that there's a big component to our device usage that is IT related, not necessarily instructional. Like I said, as I said, we'll get to what you do, but I hear what, can't join a meeting if you're outside of the con. So we have the ability to keep board members who are traveling overseas from joining board meetings, but we can't shut down video games at our schools. I mean, it's you know what I mean?
But also, so many things are shut down. I have heard from at least 3 teachers and or parents of Homely students and or students about things that they cannot do anymore now that we have tighter lockdowns on Chromebooks, right? Like a Homely student can't watch assigned videos that are like in the Canvas assignment. When you click on it, you can't do it from your district saying, you know, like they can't get to it. So then they have to try to go on personal device and try to type in the right
And not all of
URL.
them have personal devices.
Anyway, just a lot of things are way more complicated because, you know, or like a teacher assigns the students, email your parents and send them a link to this project that you're working on. And then the students email the link. Some parents are saying they didn't get it because their kid says that they can't email to that certain place from their school device. I got my kid, but when I click on the link to the assignment, I don't have permission to look at the assignment. He can't give me permission to look at the assignment because I'm not on it. You know, like it's very, and the teacher's just
You
like,
can't send documents out to anybody that doesn't have an RS email.
right, and the
because-
teacher's just like,
Sometimes
it's
even make
May
sure-
30th, I don't care about this. You know, like this is way too late in the school year for me to be stressed out about this stupid, all these like little
Right.
things.
I vote for that. I vote.
I don't know how that fits into a project. I just think there's
It definitely,
something we need a deeper dive on.
it definitely fits
deeper
in.
dive on IT, network security.
And networks
Just what's
as.
working, what's not working.
And I
networks as a
appreciate,
whole.
I really do appreciate all the work that Glenn does to try to protect the kids from dangerous things and things they're not supposed to be doing and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the issues that I think we're facing is because parents are complaining that they don't want to parent their kids and tell them that they can't do stuff on their device. And so then we have to lock it down for them, then it locks down too many things. It's when like just,
Yeah,
Well,
Glenn
and-
Glenn was telling me about a very specific example today of exactly that, where the parent didn't want to be the bad guy and take away the device.
Yeah, so
So they
have
forced
it.
Glenn to reinforce it to take away the device, so that the district could be the bad guy. So, I mean, I
But
actually
he
did.
didn't do that, right?
Well, eventually they did, but they had it, he spent hours and hours and hours and hours troubleshooting the issue for a single student. I think, you know, some of these maybe are really great topics for these deep dive kind of workshops. For us to then talk about, is there a policy, is there a procedure, is there something to work on it may not be a goal for the year, but it may be a really great deep dive discussion. I think another one similar to that may be the bullying, you know, the harassment, bullying, intimidation sort of stuff, policies, procedures, what we do. Looking at the Swiss data to figure out how we can do it better. I don't know what a goal might be in terms of reducing numbers of incidents, but we might just need a deep dive to figure out more about how to get there.
And then I know we have something scheduled, we're looking at the school improvement and stuff. Unfortunately, that's June, right?
Yeah.
When I'm gonna be out of the country, can't do it. I would probably find a way to join you when I'm out of the country, I think I could probably find a way.
You
I
can
think
do
you
it from your
can-
own personal
Yeah,
device.
yeah, from your, yeah, just not a district.
You just can't get any emails.
I wouldn't
from
take a district
RSD.
device, but that, the way that we do that, you know, in a, the school improvement, that may be project size.
How we do them?
Yeah. And, you know, after we came back from the WASDA and saw some of the other districts are doing, I think it looks to me like it's a bigger thing, maybe a project type scope.
I think some of that, if I remember, was associated with some of the reporting aspects as well, right? That you really like.
I liked reporting, I liked how they grouped, like the middle schools would, so like one year they would meet all as middle schools. Next year they would meet maybe with the high schools that they feed, you know, they kind of alternate, so there's just some coordination maybe between the schools instead of having however many different schools we have, there's trying to get some common.
Systems, the
System.
non-negotiables
Right.
inside your school culture, but there's certain things that everybody does.
Correct. And also just because we're passing students off from one building to the next, there has to be some coordination on the school. And it has to be.
It would be nice to have coordination with some folks.
Sure.
Best practices.
And I'm not saying that there isn't any,
Yeah.
because I know the counselors and stuff, they do interact.
And the thing about that, exactly what you said, they do interact, but there's no system-wide basis that the counselor from here talks to the counselor over there and the from enterprise. Each school is their own little siloed unity of however, so that's why some do it really well and some do.
But also, as we're doing improvement plans,
Yeah.
you know, we were trying to make it something
Better.
that feeds.
Other ideas?
I'd like to work on, I don't know how to say it the best way, but I think Chief Joe needs more stuff, everything. Teachers, like, I feel like we focus so much on making sure that everybody has the same things that,
We focus on equality, not equity.
well, all I know is if the teacher who spends her free time, you know, while she has a student teacher, pulling kids out into a smaller group and they see that it shows that those kids can raise their student success by having extra teaching happening, then we need to give them extra teachers that can do that every day, not just for that 9-week window where the student teacher is there. And I think it would be well worth the, what did we decide it would cost, $150,000, I don't know, $500,000 to have 3 extra teachers there a year or whatever, it would be well worth that if we could get students at that school to not be 3 grade levels below.
So I think that's a great topic to think about, how we even include that in more of our discussions that we have. So when you see the school improvement plans that are school by school by school, based on data where they've set. So what I've asked them to provide to us is, what were your goals last year? What was the outcome? Did you meet them or not meet them? And then what are your goals for next year, right? So like, what are you adjusting for next year? But then what are you gonna do about it, right? What is
And
the
what do you need
resource
from
and
us?
stuff? And so if they have specific goals where they're not meeting them because they need resources, then they could ask us for those
Right, so that's what I was gonna ask next is there a place in those plans to say, this is what we need from the district in order to accomplish our goals? This is what we didn't, this is the the progress we made on these goals, and in order to level up that progress, this is what we need. Or here's like our pie in the sky wish list, or whatever, and then we can say, well, here's what we can give you, we can't give you that, but we can give you this, or we can figure out a way to make this happen. I just feel like, you know, with the small extra efforts that are being made and the success they're seeing there from that, there's not really a good reason why we can't scale that up to work for more kids there.
Well, and that's typically what schools do, you put resources where they're needed.
I just don't, I mean, in the school improvement plans I saw last year, right, I'm not an expert at this, but I don't remember seeing like, here's what we need from you, here's the wish list, right?
So what we were provided last year and historically is the form that they fill out to submit to OSPI for their school improvement plan, which is that template, which is mostly useless for us. And they talk in that form about what they're gonna do to get there, and a lot of it is table stakes of what they've always done, not necessarily what are you gonna do different, what are you asking for, so I think, you know, that's something that, you know, I can articulate to Brian.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate that is asking them to do a little more work, but I think it will be much more helpful for us. Because when I look at the stuff that's in OSPI format, I don't care about it. It doesn't mean anything to me. Just like when we used to see the budget things that would come through that looked like a tax form, and I was like, that means nothing to me. It's numbers and letters and acronyms, and it doesn't mean anything. And the way that Travis, I mean, it's more work for Travis to do that twice, right? To do the OSPI form and also to do the forms that he does for us. But it really helps us be a lot more effective in what we're doing. And so if the school improvement plan committees, teams can put that together, and it might be a little bit extra work to say, to ask us for a wish list of what we can actually do, it would be a lot more successful in getting stuff done.
I sent him some of the templates from Watson last year, so that he has an example of what we saw there, just to make that material more digestible.
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, I know I've said this before, but I'm just like, I have to feel like we're getting, that we can actually do something to help kids, or this is really a waste of my time.
Yeah, right.
There, I said it again. I don't wanna look at OSPI stuff, it doesn't mean anything to me, I wanna see like, what can we actually do, what do we need to break together, what do we need to do to function, to help kids? You guys can care about OSPI, I don't care about it.
What you just said then would be content material for board meetings. Not performance, but in language that we can understand. Presentation, understand, here are some issues, here's what we need board direction, board.
Yeah, like we need the board to come up with, to make room in the budget for XYZ. And we can say, Travis, do we have room in the budget for XYZ? What can we move around? How can we make that happen, right? Like,
That's what we're
be
supposed to be
functioning.
doing. Yes, not the actual what, but how does it happen? How can we make sure it happens?
Right.
We introduce community values because there'll be conflicting priorities for budgets. So we're supposed to reflect the community on, hey, we want to spend it here and not on travel or something.
Right.
That's.
And speaking of community values, I think that another goal that we can have is somehow connecting more with the community and with students. I mean, just in the interviews that we had with the student rep applicants, we learned a lot about what matters to them, what they're, you know, what they want to see changed, what they wish things looked like at school, and I feel like that would be helpful to know from a broader base of.
It would be, if you have ideas for how we can do that, I mean, this is the challenge, right? I mean, we have a student advisory group that meets with Dr. Redinger, but doesn't meet with us, and board members don't attend that. We have a parent guardian advisory group that has very low attendance despite our efforts to communicate and get topics and get more. So, I don't know how to engage more, because people are
Agreed.
busy.
Yeah.
What the right format is. So if folks have ideas, I mean, we've tried, we did town halls at people's school and they
Yeah,
didn't show
they didn't show
up,
up.
so.
Yeah, I think it's hard, like, I mean, I know after we came back from Wasta last year, I was really like. Hyped up on those 1 minute meetings and I had like ideas of how I could like. Set aside time during the school day to go into where people are, right, but then I'm like, well. They're in class, how are they gonna come here, you know what I mean, the logistics of it are complicated as well, so I don't know how to make that work, I mean. I don't have the answers, but it's a lofty goal in my mind.
Yeah.
Because
I think
just-
where it
yeah.
works best right now, it's just where your life intersects. What? Because it's a little bit biased with the circles that
Sure.
you're involved in, you get feedback, I hear from. Kids that I am already doing something with, I get feedback from them or parents, but then it's the ones that I don't know, that I don't have any. Socially that's going in common that I don't hear.
So I think the engagement factor is gonna take baby steps again, because, I mean, you probably heard this, you've done it. Much longer than I have, but in the 9, almost 10 years that I've sat on board, one of the things that I hear repeatedly from the community members is that, they don't feel like it matters if they come and show up or not and share their point of view, the decision's already there. So we really have to figure out how to not just go through emotions, but really make sure that they understand that we're engaged in listening. And I think we've seen that a little bit more with parents, advisory committee, as we do things that they really want to talk about, we need to get more impact and really figure that out. But just really letting the community know, yes, we are here. We don't work for the district, we don't work for the community, we work with the community to make sure the schools project what their interests are. So I think it's gonna be a building battle to some degree, and I also think that it would be good if board members did attend, the ones that could attend the superintendent advisory committee. And really try to get them, because that's gonna change a little bit too as the new superintendent comes. But I know that a lot of board members do attend those committees. And also they're related to board topics, so that students have more of a voice in actually the decision making that's happening at board meetings, as opposed to just sometimes random topics and information. And that's sort of where you come in more from that standpoint of really being able to utilize that student voice in places where we can make change. And
How do you guys organize tours for the students?
So that was actually a topic that was on my list I was gonna kind of end with. So over the last couple of years, we've done all the elementary schools, and then we did all the secondary schools, and Brian asked me recently what we would like to do this next year, if we want to pick a few that maybe folks haven't seen, or where there are some other programs we'd like to go see, they could set them up. Do we wanna take a break for some of that, or are there specific things that you've not seen in the tours that you'd like to see, where we could maybe go and do more of a targeted, we'd like to see special education or inclusion, right? Or we'd like to go see, more of a deep dive of, Homelink or River's Edge to understand if we threw the program, what that meant.
so I would like to request that they're all like Chief Joe's, where it wasn't a rolling picture of rainbows and unicorns. It was
Reality.
it was reality, and I know that sometimes it's hard when you have district administrators and board members show up, because there's that fine balance between when your boss is in the room versus when you're. So how do we make sure that that comfort level is there? Chief Joe's maybe he's awesome. The principal over there is incredible and has done a great job, and really understands that things aren't going to change as fast. So how do we fulfill that and get all those principals to understand that, you know what, You need to tell us what you need to know.
Well, and I think because we've done the full tour of all of them, we'd be starting sort of over. We could ask for specific things, right? So if there are specific tours, I know you have suggestions, Sanan, or, you know, others have thoughts on what they want to see this next year.
I think that the students haven't been invited. Students haven't been invited.
It was part of school day.
But I think we could come and it'd be very useful.
Actually, you're probably right, because you are super voice. At least middle school, for sure, because most of what you guys do impacts middle school and high school. But still elementary to some degree.
Yeah, we just try to be really sensitive to what we pull you out of school for, that we're not detrimentally impacting your education by pulling you out all the time.
I honestly don't see any effect. Like how much I'm at school.
Well, and we're not pulling you out as much as like a varsity. Doing that, then you would be as a varsity sports, traveling for sport.
That's true.
So I don't have any.
Well, and I mean, obviously, if it's a day like, oh, I have a test that day, I can't go, right? That would be one thing.
You're gonna manage your.
Yeah, I feel like especially the student reps that we have, right, they can be responsible, manage their calendar.
But do you guys just like, do you do all the schools every year or?
Well, what we did last year, year before last, we did all the elementaries. And then this year we did all the secondaries.
Like
So-
throughout the school year, so we probably did like, this year we probably did like one a month, right?
I thought you guys also did, the secondaries including those schools?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
And
the school
all
year was like one
yearlings.
a month, but with the elementary schools. It's 13.
So if you have thoughts, think about it, because Brian asked me the question recently and he could set them up. Thinking about next year. If there's particular programs or things that you'd like to see or hear more about that maybe we don't talk about.
I don't know if when you did the elementary schools, you got a good look, like, school, like, much look on that, you know. I'd like to see that, we see how that's about, but I'd also like maybe put it out to the buildings themselves, maybe if there's something that they want us to see. I don't know, that's-
Kind of like even like a high and a low, right? There's something that we're really proud of at our school.
There's something that
we
needs your
hope
attention.
to be. Cause I think that's kind of what we saw at Chief Joe that was really helpful. It's like some things that they've done that have really been successful, and then some things that they have challenged.
So I think you just do like mix up all of them. Sure.
Maybe some of us have full-time jobs.
Well, not like every elementary school, every secondary
But
school.
there's the 24 schools.
So one thing some board members or boards across the state do is board members are assigned X number of schools. So like you pick schools that are sort of your home base or whatever. You go visit them, you go talk to them, you sort of relay back to the board the comments and concerns or pluses and minuses. That school sees. Actually, a lot of school boards do that, like you're assigned to school assigned, but if you would have Richland and you would have Hanford, because you have kids that already do.
Maybe we should switch.
Yeah, right. But I mean, just sort of that, just sort of that go-to person who then replies back to the board on what you're gonna do.
Something to think about. Something that we can set up for next year. We are past our time.
We did pretty good, we have a lot done.
We talked about a lot. I have a lot of notes. Okay,
We probably has a lot of notes.
anything else? All right, we're adjourned.